The morning I found the fence, the mist was still sitting low in the valley like it belonged there. I'd driven that dirt road since I was a kid, knew every dip in it. But halfway down the ridge, I saw steel glinting where open pasture should have been, a chain-link fence cut clean across my lower field, bright white sign bolted to it, private community property, authorized residents only. 2 security trucks idled near a freshly graded access road. Diesel fumes drifted through the cool air. Taped to the gate was a letter with my name on it. It informed me, politely, that I was encroaching on HOA-managed conservation land. Encroaching. On my own 2,500 acres. My father's cattle grazed here. His ashes are scattered under the cedar line just beyond that fence. I didn't yell, didn't call anyone. I just stepped closer and read the sign again. At the bottom, in small print, was a parcel number. It was almost right. Almost. Instead of arguing with men in matching polos, I got back in my truck and drove home to pull the deed. I've never been the kind of man who argues louder than the paperwork. I'm second generation on that land. My dad bought most of the valley in the late 70s, when nobody wanted scrub pasture and floodplain. I studied civil engineering, worked highway projects for 20 years, then came home after my wife passed. The Ridge house is small. The files in my office aren't 4 steel cabinets. Every survey, every plat map, every tax receipt, every recorded easement going back 40 years. Labeled, index, backed up. I don't hate HOAs. Some keep neighborhoods clean. What I hate is overreach dressed up as authority. Dad used to say, if it's recorded, it's real. If it's not recorded, it's noise. This valley isn't just dirt. It's leased pasture, protected watershed, and a cedar grove where 3 generations of my family are buried. I pulled the deed, then opened the county GIS map online. The HOA subdivision bordered my northern line. Bordered. It didn't cross it, which meant someone, somewhere, thought they could redraw reality. The subdivision north of me calls itself Valley Ridge Estates. Stone entrance, iron gates, fountains that run even in drought restrictions. Houses start around $1 million. Their marketing brochure features drone shots of my valley at sunset, labeled Exclusive Natural Preserve Access. Their board president used to be a commercial developer. Smiles wide, sleeves rolled, always talking about community vision. Vision apparently now included my land. The certified letter I found on the fence referenced a historic access easement, recorded in 1998. According to them, granted the HOA authority to manage and conserve portions of the valley for environmental continuity. Manage, conserve. Such gentle words, buried near the bottom was the line. We assume you'll cooperate to avoid unnecessary litigation. They had attorneys on retainer, residents with political connections, a polished website explaining stewardship and shared resources. Their entire claim rested on one recorded document from 1998. Just one. And within a week, it stopped being letters and became something I could see and hear from my own porch. By the second week, security trucks were driving my fence lines like they'd always belonged there. One of them stepped out and handed me a printed citation for trespassing on protected greenbelt property. My property. He wouldn't meet my eyes when he did it. Then came the county notice. The HOA had filed a compliance complaint, claiming I'd interfered with designated conservation land. I started getting certified letters almost daily, thick envelopes full of polite threats and highlighted phrases. They mowed a strip through my lower pasture. Installed wooden trail markers with little brass plaques. I could hear hammers from the ridge at dusk. I met with a local property attorney I've known for years. He leaned back in his chair and said quietly, if they establish open and notorious management long enough, they'll try to argue prescriptive rights. Delay favors them. That word stuck. Prescriptive. Back home, I read the 1998 document they kept citing. It referenced a survey map attached as Exhibit B. The legal description didn't line up with my current parcel boundaries, not even close. Instead of rushing to court half-prepared, I ordered a full historical title search. It didn't stay private. Board members started showing up at county meetings, speaking during public comment about a landowner obstructing regional conservation efforts. They never said my name, but everyone knew. Then came the neighborhood Facebook groups, posts about greedy ranchers hoarding land, about how Valley Ridge was trying to preserve open space for families. The local paper ran a soft feature with drone photos and quotes about environmental stewardship. My fence was cropped out. Theirs wasn't. A week later, I got a quiet offer. They'd purchased the disputed section at a number well below market. The email mentioned, almost casually, that prolonged litigation could complicate agricultural tax exemptions. It was meant to rattle me. It didn't. I declined in 2 sentences. The title search came back thicker than expected. Buried in the 1998 filing was a requirement for adjacent landowner consent to validate the easement expansion. There was no signature from my father. None from me, but missing ink isn't enough. I needed confirmation from the original record itself, so I drove to the county recorder's basement archives. The recorder's office basement smells like paper and cold dust, metal shelves, old plat books, the quiet hum of fluorescent lights. I signed the request slip and waited while a clerk rolled out the original 1998 file on a cart. Exhibit B was there, full-sized, not the cropped copy the HOA had attached to their letters. I laid it beside the official subdivision plat and started comparing bearings and distances the way I used to on highway jobs. That's when I saw it. The easement wasn't blanket access. It was conditional, activated only if a specific gravel access road was constructed along a defined corridor by December 31, 2002. That road was never built. Valley Ridge had paved a different entrance 15 years later, hundreds of feet east of the described corridor. Conditional easements don't float forever. If the trigger never happens, neither does the right. But there was more. The map they'd been circulating was trimmed tight around the shaded area, cutting off the expiration clause printed in the lower margin. I didn't react. Not yet. Instead, I called an independent surveyor and asked him to overlay 1998 onto modern GPS. The surveyor finished the overlays 3 days later. We spread them across my kitchen table. There it was in clean, unforgiving lines. Their fence sat 480 feet inside my deeded boundary, not grazing it, not straddling it. Deep inside, the 1998 easement hadn't just expired. It never activated. Wrong road, wrong corridor, missing adjacent owner consent. And the parcel number printed on their gate sign? It matched a proposed lot from an early draft plat that was never legally subdivided. They'd branded my valley with a ghost parcel. I didn't drive over there, didn't make a scene. I filed first, a formal notice of encroachment and demand for immediate removal. Then a quiet title action to settle the boundary permanently. Then claims for trespasses and damages tied to documented pasture loss and grading. Every filing included certified survey overlays, and the full, uncropped 1998 exhibit showing the conditional clause and missing signature. But I didn't stop with the HOA. I mailed copies to their title insurer, to the bank holding their development expansion loan, to anyone financially exposed to a defective claim. If they wanted to play paperwork, we'd play it correctly. Within 48 hours, I got an email notice. Valley Ridge Estates had called an emergency board meeting. The clubhouse was fuller than I expected. Leather chairs, bottled water at every seat, a faint scent of citrus cleaner in the air. Residents lined the walls. The board sat at the front behind a polished table. The president opened with a steady voice, calling my filings technical boundary disagreements. He said the HOA had acted in good faith to preserve shared green space. When they opened the floor, I walked up with a flash drive. I projected the full 1998 survey onto the screen. Not the cropped version, the whole sheet. Then I read the clause printed in the lower margin. The access easement was conditional upon construction of a specific road by December 31, 2002. I let the date hang there. Next slide. Overlay map showing their fence 480 feet inside my boundary. Next, the signature page, blank where adjacent landowner consent was required. Finally, I told them suit had already been filed, and their title insurer and lender had been formally notified of a potentially void claim. The room went quiet in a way that felt physical. Bird Counsel leaned in, whispering fast. For the first time, no one was smiling. Within weeks, the consequences started stacking up. The first crack showed up in a letter from their insurer. Reservation of rights. 2 words that make lenders nervous. Meant coverage wasn't guaranteed if the HOA had misrepresented the easement's validity. A week later, I heard their expansion loan had been paused, pending resolution of the title dispute. Then the board president resigned. Personal reasons, the email said. No mention of surveys or missing signatures. Court issued a temporary order requiring removal of the fence, while the quiet title action moved forward. I stood on the ridge and watched contractors pull up the posts they'd sunk into my pasture. The sound of metal clanging into truck beds carried farther than I expected. We eventually settled. They paid for pasture restoration, grading repair, and documented trespass damages. No arrests. No handcuffs. Just strained budgets, insurance scrutiny, and a reputation that wouldn't polish back to glossy. And when it was over, I had one more decision to make. My attorney walked me through the option of pursuing punitive damages. We had leverage now. Real leverage. I passed. Restoration costs were paid. Boundaries were acknowledged. That was enough. Instead, I recorded a conservation covenant against my own deed. Clear metes and bounds. GPS coordinates. Explicit language barring future implied access without written agreement. Permanent. Public. Unambiguous. It protected my valley. It also protected the subdivision from ever being misled by another ambitious board. I met with the new HOA leadership in a small conference room, no audience this time. We discussed lawful access points along the true boundary for emergency watershed cooperation. Nothing verbal, everything recorded. My father used to say, if it's recorded, it's real. When the final documents came back stamped and filed, I drove down into the valley at dusk. No fence, no signs, just wind through cedar and open grass that still knew my name. And there's something every homeowner needs to understand about that. So, let me ask you something. If an HOA put a fence on your land tomorrow, would you know exactly where your deed ends? Not where you think it ends. Not where a marketing brochure says it ends. I mean recorded boundaries, easements, expiration clauses, missing signatures. Most disputes don't start with bulldozers. They start with paperwork nobody double-checks. Pull your plat, read the margins, and next time, I'll tell you about a homeowner who found out his HOA was never legally incorporated.